Hi, I'm Kent.
And I'm Anna.
We're married, we make movies, and we believe that anyone in any circumstance can make a feature film.
Welcome to the Feature Filmmaker Podcast. If you want a career making movies, you're in the right place.
Hit subscribe to never miss an episode.
Let's jump right in.
Dan Davis, welcome to the Film and Family Podcast. Almost forgot the name of the podcast, and we're super excited to have you. Quick introduction. Dan Davis is a filmmaker, husband and father, Utah local, and owner of Stiry, a documentary story house is how it's described online. And he's also the director of a feature film, Breaking Into Beautiful, and also a recent short film, The Luckiest Man on Earth. Is that what it's called?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I couldn't remember if it was in the world or on Earth. And I got it right. Okay. I haven't seen the latter, but I have seen Breaking Into Beautiful, which is a wildly awesome movie. Like,
oh, thank you.
It's this, I think about the word document, and you've documented something that is so painful and so it's tricky because I think I can't imagine. I'd love to ask you about this. But why don't we just start there, kind of jumping into the midst of things, and maybe we can pedal back and get more context. But I'm really curious what your feelings are, because I know that when you document, and this is not the first time this has happened in the world of many wonderful documentaries, when you document someone who's passed away, when the film comes out, or just documenting people who've gone through really hard stuff, which is pretty much what story is all about. I mean, people going through struggles and writing their own stories, right? Do you ever feel like conflicted? Because I just made a documentary that's about a bunch of people going through a bunch of really hard stuff. And sometimes I go, our story was part of that documentary, but I still sometimes feel like, am I like taking advantage or how do I honor these people without, I don't know, using them? That's me, my own self, doubt. I don't know if you ever feel the same or similar or how you think about that.
Yeah. I mean, it's hard to document something hard and that's something difficult. But I think in many film circles, you document things with an agenda, and we do it very differently. Our agenda is not something that we bring to the table. It's something we decide on together with our storytellers. And so because those align, there's a deeper connection. There's a way that we honor their story in such a positive, uplifting, accurate way that makes them feel comfortable in the process. And really, if you were to look at our secret sauce, it's being able to just be genuine and authentic with somebody and making sure they know that their story is the most important in the world in that moment. And we make sure that our staff, our production crew, everybody is on the same page with that. And that means there's certain people we won't hire, or certain people we won't work with, or certain companies we won't work with because they don't have that same agenda. And so we just make sure that we keep that pure motive going into each film that we do, just like Breaking Into Beautiful, and make sure that we capture it in a way that truly honors them with no hidden agenda.
Yeah. I think that's awesome. I want to ask you a little bit about kind of pedaling back. Like, when did these creative fires start burning for you, and you said, "Okay, I want to make films"? And was documentary always part of that picture, or did you grow into that, or kind of find that later, or did you not want to go into film? And then, I don't know, what's that story look like?
Yeah, very, very different for me than I think a lot of filmmakers, where it wasn't something that was on my radar. I went to business school, always wanted to be an entrepreneur, and always had been an entrepreneur and wanted to work for myself, but never saw myself running a documentary film, story house. That just wasn't in my vision as I graduated from business school and went to go create. And I thought sports was going to be that, because sports was a big part of my life, and competitive sports was just everything to me. And so I created a business around that because I loved it, and trained youth athletes, trained thousands of them, and felt like, oh, this is great. This is my calling in life. And then when that business all kind of crumbled through some various mistakes that I made and some others made, I felt like I was lost for sure, trying to figure out what I was supposed to do next. And I mean, it would take too long for this podcast, but eventually the long story short of it is I ended up getting hired as an entrepreneur to run a film production company for a director. And that was my introduction truly into the power of film. I knew the power of film before, but until I actually got into it and ran the business and saw the creative and everything around it, I didn't like fully understand it and appreciate it and love it until that happened.
So you got hired by a production house, like a director who wanted to have a production studio. You got hired to run it. What does that mean? You were like the producer, or were you just like a production coordinator? What does that mean? Because I think that's going to raise some eyebrows from some listeners who are going to go, "Oh, how'd that happen?"
Yeah, so I mean, they were looking for somebody that knew how to run a business, not somebody that just knew how to run a production. And they had somebody prior to me that was a traditional producer or production coordinator running their business, and it just didn't work for them. And so they said, we want to bring somebody in that has management experience, leadership skills, has the ability to take our business to the next level. And so that's why I ended up getting the position over a bunch of people that had experience in film. And it seems really odd for a lot of people to say, well, you didn't have any film experience. How could you, build that company and grow that company? And I think it was because that director thought outside the box and said, we need to run this like a business, not just a creative studio. And we need to pair those things together. And so I brought my creative expertise, my marketing, expertise and background, and business management background, and was able to successfully run his business for him while I was there. Because I feel like in a lot of ways I was at an advantage because I wasn't sucked into the, existing processes and procedures that maybe, some were effective and some were ineffective. I came into it really, really blind and was able to look at everything, bird's eye view versus, boots on the ground. Sometimes you get a little too close to it in business. And I looked at it from kind of the top down, and then got, my boots on the ground, and was able to figure out how to run that business successfully and really allow our director to do what he does best. And that was the creative side and the production side. So that's where I think it was a success for both of us, is I wanted to do something creative and meaningful, and he wanted to do the same thing, but didn't want to worry about the business.
Yeah. So how did you end up becoming, step into this more creative author role where you're actually directing now and you're actually making these documentaries? Like, did you feel that happen internally, I guess is my question. Like, I actually now have a creative appetite where I want to start creating things.
Yeah, I mean, I had a lot of experiences to be creative at that production studio that I got hired into. At first, it was just, all business side. And then I got into the weeds of the production and creative. And I was able to launch a feature film while I was there and be involved in some of those final creative decisions and manage the post-production process, and able to see how we can impact people through film. And I started to kind of lean into the creative side of me that had always existed in my entrepreneurial ventures. And I loved it. I loved that part. I became less interested in the business part and more interested in the creative part. And that was more fulfilling. And I was able to, luckily do both, but I wasn't able to do as much creative as I wanted. And the director wanted to take the business a different direction that I felt inspired to take it. It was more commercial work. It was projects that weren't as meaningful. We had clients like Verizon and Intel and these massive companies that we were working with, massive ad agencies across the nation. and doing work all over the world. And I think from the outside looking in, people would say, "Oh man, that must have been so cool." But I can't tell you how uncool it is to do work that doesn't mean anything. We were making commercials for products we didn't care about, companies we didn't really have an emotional attachment to. And we were just taking, checks to do creative work, but the creative work wasn't filling us. And so I eventually decided to resign from that position. And actually, before I started Stiry, I became the CEO of a healthcare company in Arizona and did that for a time, thinking that maybe if I found my way into something that was a product that was more about caring for people and connection, that I would be fulfilled. But once again, the business side got in the way of it for me, where I wasn't able to, truly live up to what I felt like was my potential in that. And so I resigned again, and then that's really where Stiry was born. I took all of my entrepreneurial experience, all my creative experience, and said, if I was to do something that really lent itself to what I feel like I'm called to do, it would be tell people stories and use the power of film, use my business experience to bring stories to life that actually make a difference, that help people. And that's really where, through a lot of failures and a lot of really rough times, I ended up, starting Stiry back in those moments where I was trying to figure out, what I was meant to do.
Yeah, yeah. No, I love that because I often am trying to figure out like the blending of creating a professional product that you can sell and telling impactful, meaningful stories that exist for their own sake. Like they should exist, they exist for their own sake, but someone's got to pay for them, or at least you got to be making enough money to pay for your mortgage, like, and so like, how have you found that with Stiry? Because I'll just, of my own experience, I've watched a couple of your shorts on your website and I was like, oh, these are really cool stories. Like these are actually maybe some people that I recognize. But they're all moving. Like they feel like any one of them could feel like, well, this was a passion project. It doesn't feel like I was, for the most part, I feel like you guys are achieving that. Like that it's especially Breaking Into Beautiful. It's like this is a work of passion and entertainment. The story's compelling, but I don't get this sense that there's like so and so hired them to make this because of a paycheck or because it was like an ad. Like because there's narrative driven ads and they're sometimes really good, but like actually making them a work of entertainment that people spiritually feel drawn to for their own sakes. Like I want to watch this. I actually want to. That's very hard to do. So how have you blended that? Because I guess, you have this mission to make documentaries that you say are fulfilling. How have you positioned yourself in such a way that like you're able to make a living doing that? I guess is my question.
Yeah, I mean, it all goes back to, what did I feel called to do, and then how do I create a business around that? And my business experience really, really helped in some ways, and in other ways, I feel like when you go down these paths, I'm reminded how many times, what I don't know. And one thing that was for sure when I started this company is I was going to live and make my decisions based on my gut, based on what I felt like was a spiritual, prompting or experience. And I would take those promptings and I would make business decisions. And I didn't create a business plan that actually, came to fruition. And that's really, really hard to give people advice to say, hey, just follow your gut and, do whatever you want. That's not what I'm saying. I think what you should do is follow your gut, make sure that you, and in this instance, it was my wife, my partner in life, make sure that she could back what I was doing and support me as things got difficult, as I did follow those promptings. And so I went into it with this, hey, I'm going to follow those promptings. I figured out what my calling was. It was bring these stories to life. It was to connect with people on this deep level through film. That's why I had that film experience, years in the past. And how do we make a smart business out of this? Instead of doing what many people do where they bleed themselves, dry or in the negative, doing passion projects.
Mm-hmm.
And That's what the film industry is full of. And I knew that I couldn't support my family or other people's families if I did that. So I went into it and I said, how can I make what we do replicable? How can I make this a product, a service, creative, licensing, distribution, all those elements that deal with production and storytelling replicable? And so from the very beginning, we weren't just, hey, we're going to go tell stories. I hope somebody hires us, for production to do their story. We said, how can we actually flip everything on its head that I knew, and be smart about how we approach each of these stories, and do them in a way where people will actually watch them, and that will be our best advertisement. And so we could have easily done what I did in the last production company I ran, where we just did commercial projects, and we eventually just succumbed to whatever their desire was with the film.
Mm-hmm.
Instead, we said, we're going to make films that people actually want to watch. And we had no idea that when we approached it that way, that our watch times on YouTube and other platforms, social media platforms, and really Instagram was starting to take off at the time, 10 years ago when we started this. We didn't know that our watch through percentage would just crush so much, other content out there. And it was because of the storytelling that we put into our projects.
Mm-hmm.
And so we did that first and created an inventory of products, films that people would want to watch. And then companies started to say, I want one of those.
Mm-hmm.
How do you make content that people will actually watch? Stiry's doing it somehow. People are paying attention to what they're doing. And I'll never forget, we were with a very large fitness technology company approached us. We got a meeting with them, and they said, we went in there with kind of a pitch deck and all these different things, because that was my experience in the past, getting, closing deals. And we threw that all out the window when the guy walked in, the marketing director of the entire company, and said, I want you to do what you're doing on your website, but for us, for our brand. And we said, well, then you have to be okay with the fact that it'll be story focused, not brand focused. And that's when the light bulb for him clicked, and many other companies that we've worked with. Going into it, they don't have this expectation that we're just going to shove the brand down people's throats. We're going to do stories that matter and have your brand associated with them.
Mm-hmm.
So that's much different than, we're going to create this with a script that matches your brand identity. We're doing that, but we're doing that through somebody that represents their brand. But that's just the production side of our business. There's a whole other side of our business with licensing and distribution and stuff, where we get to still tell stories without, companies associated with them, and find homes for those. And that's been based, once again, on inspiration, on topics that matter, content that people want to see, content that people can relate with. And we've just focused everything we do on that, and we don't do anything else. We don't take other jobs that people offer us. We've said no more times than I can count for very lucrative deals, because they didn't fit what our mission was, and that was to help people find their own potential through our stories.
Yeah.
And that focus is carved a niche for us that has worked well.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that's super helpful. For me to hear. And I wonder about that caveats right into what I was going to ask you about, because that's really clarifying that you've got some that clients are like, can you help us find and tell a story? It's like, yeah, we can do that. On your website, you talk about how like every human has a compelling story behind their facade. There's something going on there. But then at the same time, you've left yourself room or space to pursue stories that just reach out to you. You're like, hey, we want to tell this story. So no brand has greenlit us. We're just going to do it, and then we're going to distribute it like you're a movie house, right? So with Breaking into Beautiful, is that your guys' first feature that you directed and you guys made as Stiry?
Yeah. Yep, that was my first feature one that I directed from start to finish. I'd, managed other feature projects, but that was, a different experience. And really, really happy with how, it ended up. But that was a huge risk and huge reward.
Yes. Yeah. That's awesome. You should feel super proud of it. The finished product most of all, but also it seems that it's been it's been watched by many, many, many people. So that's really exciting. But with
Thanks.
with Breaking to Beautiful, I wanted to ask you, you guys premiered at ZIFF 2022,
2023.
2023, and then you guys went live on the Angel Studios app. So that was your distribution deal. Like that was when you first kind
Yeah.
of came out with the movie.
Yep.
In about 2 years later.
So it was, let's see, 18 months or so later. Yeah, a
Okay.
little more than that.
Yeah,
Yep.
I think it was like November, December of 24.
So January 2nd of 2025 is when
Okay.
it came out.
Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah. So really, yeah, just under two
not
years.
even a year. Yeah.
Yeah. So what took so long? And what was that process like? Because, with the feature, it's like, okay, we've really got to find a home that we feel confident is going to actually get people to watch this. Because you could
Yeah.
chalk it on. I'm sure you had, correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm almost positive that you had offers on the table from some distribution companies that were probably not good, not good offers. Is that the case, or was it not the case?
It was a little different with this project. We had shopped it around to a number of people, and we had some theatrical distributors that wanted to launch it theatrically first. And so we went through down the road of that to see if that was the right move for us. Documentary films typically don't, go to theatrical release first. That's just not it's not really a pattern that we had enough history and data to follow. We want to be change makers and make a big splash, but we just didn't feel comfortable with that route. And then we had a major network that had watched the film. We were able to get to the top of the totem pole there, and they absolutely loved the film. And they had a whole plan to launch documentary content on their cable network. And that plan failed miserably before they had a chance to launch Breaking Into Beautiful. Before we even got the chance to go pen to paper, they had a documentary film that they launched prior to ours that didn't do well on their network. So they actually scrapped that strategy. And
That's such a common story that they go, I had a bad experience with one documentary, so
yeah,
we don't do documentary anymore. Or I had a bad experience with this thing that you made, but it was similar.
yeah,
So we're all done with that. It's like a
yeah, it was a
Texas law.
bummer. It would have been a great partnership, and it would have done really, really, I'm convinced, still would have done really, really well on their network. And the story that they compared it to, just by nature of it being a documentary too, there wasn't really a lot of similarities, but
Yeah.
was not as well done. And so we were not surprised when it was their first one they launched and didn't do well. And so we were kind of left after 2 years of building that relationship with a major studio, major distributor for us. It could have created a huge pipeline for the rest of our stories, but because they decided to go that direction, they ended up being acquired by another major network during that time as well. And as it got messy, we were left wondering, okay, what do we do? This was where we thought, its home would be. They loved Kim. They loved this story. And I won't mention their names, who it was, but if you knew who it was, you would say, oh, this would have been perfect, with them. So we were kind of left going, what do we do with this? And so during that same process, we got into the Zions Indie Film Festival. We submitted to a few other festivals, but we had met and had great relationships actually with a few people at Angel Studios. And so we just kind of told them our plans for the film, and then that we wanted to, submit it through, their process, which is very different than other distributors. And there's a voting process where the members vote versus just the owners. And so we decided, okay, let's look into this. And after, gosh, it was probably a good 18 months of going back and forth with them as they were figuring stuff out on their side, because they had changed their processes and procedures, and they didn't have a lot of content on their platform. And we were worried that, that could be a great thing on one hand. But on the other, we were just worried that there wasn't enough of a subscriber base to support our film. And so we rolled the dice a little bit and kind of courted and dated them long term, I would say, to try to figure out if they were the right partner. And then as soon as it clicked, it clicked. And we said, okay, they're growing, we're growing. It's a good time to distribute this film with them. Some of the other distributors and contacts that we had in the industry were just didn't feel as solid, didn't feel as promising, and so we just decided to go with Angel Studios, and it's been a huge success for them, and really, really helped their subscriber base. It's been really cool to kind of watch it draw people into their community, and it's been good for us to be able to. We're just in year one of that distribution deal, but it's been good for us to see, what we can expect with the success of our films, and trying to figure out how we can make that sustainable moving forward with films that we distribute through them and other places. And just seeing, the feedback and all the data that comes back from that it's been a giant case study that's been, really, really helpful for us to see what we want to do moving forward. But I think most importantly, Kim's film deserved a home somewhere, that honored her story and her legacy that we portrayed in her film. And Breaking Into Beautiful wasn't meant to be, let's just put this on YouTube, set it and forget it. It was meant to go to the world, and we needed a partner that would do that with us. And Angel became that partner for us, and we're happy with how it has reached people, and her legacy continues, and the lessons that she taught in her film continue.
I love that. I think that's what's so powerful about documentaries, that when you walk away with a finished movie, you're not just walking away with like, this was my neat thing that I put pen to paper and I created it from myself, which there's value to that, and we shouldn't undercut ourselves. But there's a degree of responsibility, I think, that comes when you're like, this is a person's life. This is a person who's not me, and maybe it's a whole community that's not me, that's relying on me to get this into a place that none of them have anything to do with film. Like, that's what's so beautiful about documentary as well, is that it's a film about not filmmakers. And it's just their real lives. Like, it's their hearts and their stories. And so I totally relate to that. I'm super excited. Now, we're all about real talk, but also respectfully, you're totally welcome to share whatever you do or do not want to share. In terms of like your data, how much can you share with us in terms of like expectations versus performance, in terms of viewership or ROI or anything? You might not be in a place where you want to talk about that yet, and that's totally okay. Some filmmakers are and some aren't. I don't know if there's any of that you want to get into, or that would be just for the sake of listeners being able to learn, and myself to be able to learn.
Yeah, I mean, what I will share is just your success of your film really just totally depends on your distributor's ability to market it. There's a lot of stuff that you can do on your side to drive attention, and make no mistake about it, we drove a ton of people to their platform. Tens of thousands of people that were in our network and in Kim's network, that was the storyteller and Breaking Into Beautiful. We drove a lot of traffic, hundreds of thousands of impressions, to their app, to be able to watch the film. And so that helped it, be very successful in the beginning, but then you kind of turn the keys over to them, and they've got distribution rights now. So what are they going to do with it? And we have different press things we've done, different things we've done on social media campaigns. We've had anniversary dates of, when she passed away, to kind of remind everybody about her legacy. And there's different dates in the calendar that we can push, with the focus being part of the film being cancer, making sure that people are aware that there's a film out there about somebody going through this experience, and everybody's got somebody in their lives that has been influenced by cancer. And so there's different things you can do to kind of push that message and that mission of the film. But the distributor really holds a lot of the cards. So are they going to advertise it? Are they going to send it out to the world? And we know that, with Angel, that was one of the reasons that we went with them, as we knew going into it, at least a sliver of what we know now, which is that they were going to advertise it and push it. But what they didn't know is that our film would bring so many people to their platform. And so because of that momentum we created with them in the very beginning, they spent a lot of money on the advertising to get people to watch the film after that. Right. It was converting people to paid memberships, and it was also converting people to watch her film and watch other films on their platform. And so they shared data with us about, watch times, watch hours, how many people were watching it all the way through. versus jumping to other pieces of content. And all that data was really, really good for us and for them. And as we move forward, looking into other projects like The Luckiest Man on Earth, we had enough data to say, okay, this is going to get watched if we put more content on there. And people love this Stiry model. They love the way we tell stories. They love the storytellers that we tell stories on. They love our cinematic, the way that we film the content. And so almost everything that we put through their voting process has passed. And so we have a series that we're working on right now, that is a bunch of other stories of people that are just as incredible and extraordinary as the other, the past stories that we've told. And so we're taking all that data to say, is this the right home for all this content? And the difference for us is we have been doing this for 10 years and have filmed over 600 films, 600 stories.
Wow.
And so
finished short
finished
films.
film.
Wow.
So when you look at all of those, we come to the table with something very different than most filmmakers. And so when we go to those meetings, it's not, hey, we'll take whatever deal you can give us. It's, we have this massive library. Do you want it? Do you want these stories on your platform? And so we have opportunities to self-distribute. We have opportunities like we have with partners like Angel, and they've been a great partner for us in distributing the content we've given to them. And then we have other partners that we're working with to distribute content to figure out where's the best home for the story, for the maybe type of story or topic. The length of the story is really important. All those things, we're taking that into consideration and saying, is this going to be worthwhile? And then can we fund more stories through whatever that mechanism is?
Yeah.
And that's how we kind of determine, what we want those deals to look like, is because if they don't allow us to fund additional stories, then we're just taking, hopefully a check that covers just the production costs. And then we're moving on trying to raise money somewhere else. And it's just not sustainable. And most filmmakers know that is production dollars. Stiry was never, I'll back up. Stiry was never started to just receive production dollars to just cover a project. That's what I knew of the film industry in the past. And I knew it wasn't sustainable. We lived and breathed by this like crazy roller coaster of production dollars, where it's like either feast or famine. And the famines were rough.
Yeah.
And the feasts were great, but everything, in between wasn't that great. And for sure, when the famines hit, we were like, gosh, where's our next project? Who's going to hire us?
Yeah.
So when I started Stiry, I was like, we're not doing it that way. We're looking for long-term deals. We're looking for sustainable, content that we can build, that we can license or distribute. We're looking for clients that want to tell lots of stories, not just one or two. And because of that, it has kept us being a pretty healthy company over the years. Not every year. We've had our years of struggle just like everybody else. But it's allowed us to say, okay, at least next month we have these stories coming down the pipeline. And so we're not like, hey, we have nothing. What do we do? And thankfully that's kept us going, as well as some deals that came in that were like, hey, you guys have a bunch of mental health content. I want to license that for my mental health platform, or, whatever. And that was all because we stayed true to stories that stir. That's what Stiry stands for. Like we didn't do anything outside of that. And that has kept us going.
Yeah, that's awesome. No, I love that idea of like leaning into what it is first. It exists because it in and of itself has intrinsic value. And then letting that value lead, as opposed to like what you said, like chasing the dollars and then like hire me to make something that you think is valuable, but maybe no one else does. And so, yeah, that's really interesting. So, I had some other questions. I'm curious about, so you have this library of short films, and that is not typically what people go into filmmaking to make. I think we all want to make and by we all, I mean kids who grew up, who were a little like me, grew up watching Steven Spielberg movies and going, oh, I want to make this, and there's nothing wrong with that. But it's feature content. Short films in that realm don't make money typically. They're usually calling cards for careers. Those typically don't translate into careers. Now you just have to go out and make movies, and even that can be difficult sometimes to translate into anything, financially, especially. So you're out there making documentaries. You made one feature, which was very successful, but you've been making a business out of this way before you made that feature. And you've been doing it with short films. And now you're Luckiest Man on Earth, for example, 30-ish minutes long.
Yeah.
And it's on Angel now. And I saw that just today and was like, oh, so Stiry now has movies on Angel that are like shorts, right? So
Yeah.
streaming has kind of opened that world up a little bit where it's more of like an episode of television. Like, I mean, it's 30 minutes. It's like it's like an episode of a half-hour show. And so now you're starting to release more content like that. I'm just curious, like, did you ever have any, like, were you guys ever planning on switching over to feature content after breaking into Beautiful, or is the shorts still a model that you feel very strong about? Or what's your vision and what's your opinion on those things?
We're going to just do what we feel inspired to do. And I'm not in a place to give anybody else advice on that because what's right for us could be totally different for you or, any other filmmaker. For us, it has never steered us wrong to do what we feel inspired to do. And so if there's a feature-length documentary that comes around that I feel inspired to do, we're going to do it. If there isn't, we're going to keep doing the other stuff that we're doing. So for me, it's very different. And this is where me not having a film background, I think helped in this scenario where I came into it and said, I didn't have this like vision of doing feature documentaries over and over again and becoming a famous director or, famous producer. From the very beginning was like, this is about Stiry's brand, not Dan Davis's brand. And that's what I didn't like, honestly. And I know this might offend a lot of people, but I didn't like that about the film industry when I got into it. It was all about an individual's name and not about the entire brand that they represent. And so I didn't want anybody to know who directed our films. I wanted them to say, oh, that's a Stiry film. And I think we've been successful in that in 10 years of people, recognizing that. We have somebody that went to Imagine Dragons is one of our clients, along with their nonprofit, the Tyler Robinson Foundation. It's a pediatric cancer focused nonprofit. Tyler Robinson was the young man that passed away from cancer, and they dedicated this nonprofit and charity to them, or to him and his family, and have kept it going for years now. And it's kind of cool because as we produce those stories over the years, we've been doing that for about 8 years, and we've seen our stories that we've done for other people go out into the ecosystem. We had somebody at an Imagine Dragons concert where they showed one of our films, text us and be like, hey, I just watched one of your films. It wasn't even related to their nonprofit. They shared something else that was related to another nonprofit that we did a story on. And so we've created this ecosystem of these stories, and people recognize them if they're at a concert or at a gala or, at a film festival. They're like, oh, that's a Stiry film. And we did that on purpose versus that's a Dan Davis film.
Mm-hmm.
Because I felt like when I ran that first production company that I talked about, it was feast or famine, because if somebody didn't want to hire a director, we wouldn't get the job, period, full stop. If they didn't want him, our company did not get the job. And people identified our brand as him, not the other way around. And so we couldn't bring other directors in. It was just like, well, either we hire him or, we go and hire another company. And if we were to bring other directors in, they would have been like, well, who's this? This isn't the same guy. This isn't the same, brand. So that's what I was saying is I flipped that on its head with Stiry. Is I said, I want Stiry to be the Kleenex brand of this type of storytelling. I want people to recognize it. And you don't say, pass me a tissue. Most people don't. I need a Kleenex, right? So I wanted people to feel that way about our brand and our stories and recognize it. And so that's where, I mean, I don't mean to offend anybody's individual name, because I think, we're all people, and we're all the creators behind these products. But I didn't want my brand to live and die by my creative. I wanted to create something from the top down that any director I brought in, they would say that's a Stiry film. And we brought other directors in, and people have no idea who's directing it, me or one of them. And of course, we give them praise, and we prop them up, and we train them. We invest a lot in them, and their name does matter to us. But our mission matters the most. And people that are on board with our mission will come in and direct in a way that fits our mission, and fits our vision with what we want to do with the business. So, most people grow up looking at Steven Spielberg's name and say, I want to be Steven Spielberg. And I was, that's not my nature, and there's nothing wrong with it. I just decided to say, I want to be a recognizable brand, not a recognizable person.
That's really cool. That's really clarifying. And I think that what you're doing is very successful, because I think that you're right. Like I recognized Stiry based on posters and based on everything. You guys are front facing with that Stiry brand. And I assumed after I got to know who you were a little bit that you directed all those things. But when you say that you've made 600, nobody directed 600 short films in 10 years, unless it's like, I don't know, a vlog counts as a short film,
right?
But that's a lot of output. So you've got to be working together, and doing that together, and the cohesiveness of that, I think, is really telling and very successful. That's really cool. We're running out of time here, but I really, I feel like you've answered a lot of these questions already. Yeah, I mean, I think that this has been super educational for me, and also really inspiring. And I really appreciate what you said about following that inspiration. I think there can be very few things that are more artistic than that. But it's also like you've found a responsible path forward that will provide for your family and keep a company sustainable. So beyond all that, you're telling stories that are just really remarkable. I've seen your Tyler Robinson short, and immediately felt a kinship with Tyler. I don't have cancer. I've never had cancer. I hope I never have cancer. I cannot relate to that experience, but there is something about watching his story and all the stories that you guys have done. I've seen the Iron Cowboy adjacent story that you guys did. I don't know if you've done multiples, but I saw one of them.
Yeah, we've done, I think, 2 or 3 of James the Iron Cowboy.
Yeah, I mean, just really cool. I mean, it was the wife and how she had to sacrifice. I apologize that I don't remember names.
Yeah.
The wife, she sacrificed so much to make this thing happen, and I super identified with that. Like, there was a film project that we did, and it took years to get over some of the trauma and just the logistical mess that hits you when you're not prepared for something, and you launch into something that you're not prepared for, and it crushes you. And yet the venture was successful, And so what you're doing is so powerful. It's so powerful, and Breaking into Beautiful is awesome. And I'm excited to carve out time in my life to watch The Luckiest Man on Earth. I'm sure it will serve me and be a wonderful emotional and spiritual net positive for me. So just thanks for what you're doing. And we're excited to keep following what you do, and probably have you back on the show, because I'm sure you're going to do something that brings up a whole crop full of questions that we're going to want to have you back for. So,
thanks. Appreciate that.
Absolutely. With that, we'll sign out on this episode, and thanks so much, Dan.
Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
Thanks for joining us today. If you like what you're hearing on the podcast, you'll love the Feature Filmmaker Academy, a program designed to teach anyone how to finance and finish a feature film.
There are many resources teaching you how to do a great job, but what they don't teach you is how to get the job in the first place.
You cannot have a career making feature films until you've made at least one. Anyone can make a feature film using our proven model.
It's risk-free. If you follow all the steps in the program, you'll finance and finish a feature film, or we'll give you your money back.
Learn more at invisiblemansion.com/feature filmmaker, or click the link in the show notes.
If you find this free resource valuable, we'd really appreciate it if you leave us a review or share it with another filmmaker. We'll see you next time. Bye.